Let's get started. The reading strategy I like to use for this first fiction section is one that you are going to recognize immediately. We use the old plot summary diagram. The caveat is that we only have a page and a half of text, so we're never actually going to get to any of the resolution. And in fact, we're really not going to get to any of the conflict. We will, however, have a nice introduction to the main characters, and we'll get to know 3 or 4 main things that happen to that character. The reason why I really like this plot summary diagram is because we're predicting what the questions are going to be. As I mentioned before, you only have time to read this section one time. And quite honestly, you shouldn't be flipping back. Meaning once you get to the questions, you're stuck with the questions unless they tell you you have to flip back. And the best way to do that is to employ a strategy like this plot summary chart. Remember, I'm an English teacher. We love plot summaries. The other thing I want to remind you about is to never skip the introduction. It gives you a really great piece of background information. You're not going to bring up any other background knowledge from this passage. It's an excerpt. So here's what I need you to do. During reading, you're going to write down the main character, and you're going to write down at least 3 big things that happen as you come across them. This is a during reading strategy, meaning you're doing it while you're reading. This is the best way to predict what the questions are going to be and save time on your test. The fiction section is the first section, but it's also a nice introduction to the test. You only get one of these reading sections, so let's make the best of it. So while you're reading, I want to see you marking up the text. You bought the book. You can write in it. And on the test day itself, my students are always marking the text. So as you go through the section, I want you to, again, read for the main character and 3 main things that happen to the main character or with the main character during reading. Ready to read? Done reading? So let's see how we did. The things that I wrote down that I thought were important were the main character, Miss Grace Spivey, and she's a teacher. At the beginning of the passage, I learned that she's a woman of the world, meaning she's well-traveled. She seems very educated, having attended several different schools. The main thing that I got from the passage was that she expected the students to know certain things. For example, Barnard College and what camels were. She felt inspired to become a teacher. She enrolled in the Teachers College and then went directly to the WPA, who placed her in 3-Step Georgia. Let's see how we did at predicting what the questions would be. The next strategy I'm going to ask you to start to use is the elimination strategy. If you're not already doing this, it will become an easy way to start to do better on all tests and all subjects, even in school right now. When you eliminate the wrong answer, what you're doing is forcing your brain to start to look at the test like a puzzle. Our brains love to do puzzles. So since there's only 4 answer choices, A, B, C, or D, it'll become an easy puzzle. Let's have a look at the possible answers. The narrator of the passage can best be described as one of Miss Spivey's former students. I like that one. Miss Spivey's predecessor. I do not like that. So I'm going to cross it out and get rid of it. Completely get rid of it. An anonymous member of the community. I don't like that answer. Or Miss Spivey herself. Well, there are no personal pronouns, so I'm going to get rid of that one too. And we'll choose A. Continuing with the elimination strategy. In the passage, 3-Step is mainly presented as a summer retreat for vacationers. I didn't get the sense they were vacationers that were meeting her as she got off the train. So I'm going to get rid of that one. A small rural town. I like that one. A town that is home to a prominent university. I don't believe that was true. Or a comfortable suburb. I think the best answer is the small rural town. Especially since there were several children in the one-room schoolhouse. It can be reasonably inferred from the passage that some of the people at the train station regard Miss Spivey's comment about the Georgia heat with sympathy, because they assume that she is experiencing intense heat for the first time. Possibly, I'm going to keep that one. Disappointment, because they doubt she'll stay in 3-Step very long. That one, there didn't seem to be a tone of disappointment in the passage. Toward Miss Spivey, anyway. Embarrassment, because they imagine she is superior to them. I don't think any of the 3-Step Georgia residents felt that way at this time, so I'm going to get rid of that one. Resentment, because they feel that she is minimizing their discomfort. I like that one. In fact, I remember them saying something to the effect of, question number 4. This is our first question that's forcing us to go back into the passage. When we go back into the passage, we want to know why we're going back. Otherwise, we'll get lost in the passage and we'll waste valuable time. So the very first thing I want to do is I want to understand completely why I'm going back into the passage. Which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? That means we're going back into the passage to find where the residents of 3-Step Georgia felt resentment because Miss Spivey was minimizing their discomfort. We want to be very careful that that's what we're looking for in the passage. So we're going to start with A, looking at lines 2 through 5, starting with she and ending with angle. Let's flip back. She stepped off the train wearing a pair of thick-soled boots suitable for hiking, a navy blue dress, and a little white tam that rode the waves of her red hair at a gravity-defying angle. That doesn't answer the question that I'm looking for, so I'm going to get rid of that one. And remember, completely get rid of it. Lines 10 through 14. I believe, lending an else and ending an else. I believe her remark irritated some of the people gathered to welcome her on the burned grass alongside the tracks. When folks are sweating through their shorts, they don't like to hear that this is nothing compared to someone else. I think we found it. I'm going to choose B. Question 5. Miss Spivey most likely uses the phrase fruitful intermission on line 26 to indicate that because the SAT test right here made reference to line 26, a lot of people are going to switch back to line 26 and reread this line. Sometimes that's necessary. But this time, let's see if we can answer it without flipping back. Again, using the process of elimination. And let's remember the information that we wrote. Miss Spivey most likely uses the phrase fruitful intermission on line 26 to indicate that she benefited from taking time off from her studies in order to travel. Well, I do remember that we wrote down that she was very well traveled, but I don't remember her taking time off from her studies to do so. Without flipping back, I can't be sure. So I'm going to keep this one right now. Her travels with Janet Miller encouraged her to start medical school. If she had started medical school, she probably wouldn't be a teacher right now. So I'm going to get rid of that one. Her early years at boarding school resulted in unanticipated rewards. I remember mentioning something about boarding school, but this doesn't really answer the question. I'm going to get rid of this one. What she thought would be a short break from school lasted several years. Now, I do remember writing this down. She had a short break from school, but it wasn't long before she was inspired, immediately ran to the teacher's college, and was placed at 3-Step, Georgia. So I'm going to get rid of that one. And choose A. We're already on question 6. Only 4 more to go. The interaction between Miss Spivey and Ralford serves mainly to. Now, when I initially read about this in the passage, I stopped and jotted down that Miss Spivey seems to think that the students should know more than they do. The students of 3-Step, Georgia should know about Barnard College. That may be a stretch. Suggest that Miss Spivey has an exaggerated view of what information should be considered common knowledge. I like that one. Establish a friendly dynamic between the charming school children and their indulgent and doting new instructor. In fact, one of the last sentences said that she wasn't as doting as the previous school teacher. So I'm going to get rid of that one. Introduce Ralford as a precocious young student and Miss Spivey as a dismissive and disinterested teacher. Although I like the last half of that sentence, we don't know enough about Ralford to be able to know whether he was a precocious young student or not. So therefore, I have to get rid of that one. Demonstrate that the children want to amuse Miss Spivey with their questions. That one's a bit of a stretch. Although I'd like to think that the children want to amuse their new teacher. There really wasn't any evidence of that in the passage, so I have to get rid of that. There certainly was evidence that Miss Spivey had an exaggerated view of what information should be considered common knowledge to the students at 3-Step Georgia. Question 7. In the third paragraph, what is the narrator most likely suggesting by describing Miss Spivey as having wandered into one situation and marched into another situation? Again, this question makes reference to two different lines, line 40 and line 49. But let's try and answer it without looking back. We know enough about Miss Spivey. Let's give it a shot. Dewey, knowing Miss Spivey wasn't very confident in her ability to teach, instilled in her a sense of determination. Well, I do think Dewey did instill a sense of inspiration in Miss Spivey, but we never knew about her confidence in teaching, so I have to get rid of that one. Talking to Dewey over coffee made Miss Spivey realize how excited she was to teach in the poorest, most remote corner of America. Now again, there were a few steps between Dewey and her placement in 3-Step Georgia, including going to Teachers College and the WPA. So we have to get rid of that one. After 2 years spent studying, Miss Spivey was anxious to start teaching and be in charge of her own classroom. That's an assumption. I'll keep it, but it's outside the passage. And D. Miss Spivey's initial encounter with Dewey's ideas was somewhat accidental, but ultimately motivated her to decisive action. I really like that one. I'm going to choose that one. Number 8. According to the passage, Miss Spivey ended up in 3-Step as a direct result of, we're going to use elimination for this one as well, her friendship with Janet Miller. Didn't have anything to do with Miss Spivey ending up in 3-Step. Attending college in New York City, again, happened, but didn't end up in 3-Step because of New York City College. Talking with a woman at the WPA, I like that one. Miss Chandler's retirement from teaching. She talked with a woman at the WPA and ended up in 3-Step. In the passage, when Miss Spivey announces that she had seen camels, the students' reaction suggests that they are delighted. I don't remember anything delighted. I'm going to get rid of that one. Fascinated. Maybe they were fascinated by Miss Spivey herself and her presence, but the reaction to her talking about camels wasn't in fascination. Baffled. I do like that one. It did take one student stepping up and making reference to the camels from the Three Kings, so I'm going to keep that one. Or worried. The students didn't seem worried that they didn't have any background knowledge about camels. Baffled is the best choice. Which choice provides evidence for the answer to the previous question? Again, we're going to have to go back into the passage. Before you go back into the passage for anything, be very clear on why you're going back. We're looking for evidence that the students are baffled about her reference to camels. She looked and thought, lines 82 to 84. She looked around the room, waiting for us to be amazed and delighted at the thought. That's Miss Spivey's reaction. That's not the student's reaction. So we're going to get rid of that one. Lines 85 through 86, we all, ending with up. We all hung up there for a minute, thinking hard, until Mavis Davis spoke up. We all hung up there for a minute. I think I'm going to keep that one. Line 87 to 90, she means, and the ends with room. She means like the three kings rode to Bethlehem, Mavis said, and she folded her hands smugly on her 7th grade desk at the back of the room. Again, that's Mavis's reaction. That's not the student's reaction. So I'm going to get rid of that one. And lines 91 through 95, instead and right. Instead of beaming upon Mavis the kind of congratulatory smile that old Miss Chandler would have bestowed on her for having enlightened the rest of us, Miss Spivey simply said, "That's right." Again, this is an interaction between Mavis and Miss Spivey, so I'm going to get rid of that one. And the correct answer is B. You just finished your first section, section 1. I hope you enjoyed your time in 3-Step Georgia. Here's a few takeaways.